Alright, quick little update. Welcome to the first episode of the Season 2 for MyTeam Career Mode in F122. We're starting here, and as you can see, we've already made it through practice and qualifying. I would have showed qualifying, but my recording software decided to freeze up. I shut everything off when it's recording wise, and to test it out, I tried to put what I had recorded, because I had it as an MKV file, and that way as soon as it shuts off it stops recording. And apparently the qualifying video kept recording behind the scenes even with my recording software closed. So I don't know what really happened there, and I'm hoping my OBS doesn't do it again, because I did go back and revert the majority of my settings. But qualifying was okay. We went one set of soft tires, and we did a double run. Our second lap wasn't an improved time, and we simulated the timer too far towards the end, where we couldn't get out fast enough and set a better time to get through Q1. So we're going to be starting in 21st on the grid, so we're going to be starting in the back row. But we are looking forward to this season, as we do have a little bit more of our driver details bumped up since our reset. But no big deal. We're still right there behind McLaren on the R&D when it comes to performance, and everyone's actually pretty close. BMW Williams isn't actually that far behind Aston Martin and Haas, and if some of those higher teams have some slip-ups, then those lower teams have an opportunity to get some decent points. And this time around, we're going to be focusing on durability for now, and once we get our money back up, we're going to be still trying to focus towards our teammate, as he did make it through Q1, and can't wait to see where he ends up on the grid, as we have a lot of catching up to do. So let's get to the race.
No more testing, no more practice. This is the real deal, and it's make or break here at round one of this year's Formula One World Championship. We go racing today around the 3.36 miles of the magnificent Bahrain International Circuit, with 15 corners and 2 good passing opportunities into turns 1 and 4. Keep an eye out for drivers locking the front left tyre into the tricky braking zone of turn 10. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. World champion Max Verstappen starts from pole position, and starting next to them is George Russell. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Hamilton, Leclerc, Sergio Perez, and Sainz, Norris, Ricciardo, Ticktum, and Esteban Ocon, Gasly, Mick Schumacher, Yuki Tsunoda, and Joe, Bottas, Vettel, Alex Albon, and Lance Stroll, Magnussen, Latifi, Johnson, and Oscar Piastri. It's almost time for the lights to go out, so let's head down to the track where preparations are underway. A new season, then a clean slate where anything could happen. Anthony Davidson is with me today, as once again we get another year of Formula One underway.
We're into those tense few minutes before the first race then. Everyone's a little bit nervous about reliability. They haven't been running in the hot, turbulent wake of other cars in practice, and they've not been pushing at 100% for long durations. Let's hope no one has to deal with any nasty surprises.
Alright, as you can see, we have our other teams, and you can also tell that, like, AlfaTauri, their hats and stuff, a little bit of an issue, but nothing to really worry about. I'm sure you guys, by the time we get halfway through the season, towards the end, you guys won't really care. So we're going to go ahead and see if we can, and they do want us to run softs. It doesn't look like they'll be able to run them pretty well. Running to lap 8 and then run the rest of the race on hards. We can use those softs to make our way back up the grid, but I feel like we can still do that with the mediums. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and go with the softs and the hards. So we will go ahead and do the softs and hards, and then we will drop our fuel down as normal. And hoping for a yellow flag here. We shouldn't. We're gonna drop it down to half, and see what we can end up with. So let's get to it. Let's get to it.
Right then, the formation lap is underway here in Bahrain, where the circuit is located in the middle of sand dunes and offers near desert conditions. Let's hope we see some scorching action on track today too. So as all the cars reform the grid, the drivers will be hoping to get a strong start. They'll want to earn some valuable points from today's race, with final communications being done with their race engineers, ensuring the planned strategies are all in place.
All right, pretty good perspective for the formation lap cinematic as the Audi Sport there at the end, opposite side. I don't know what he was doing, but tires are all warmed up. We're all forming up here at the start of Bahrain for season 2. Our 5 red lights are going, and we are off. And a little bit of a slow start here, but we try to gain position against Nicholas Latifi there in the BMW. As trying to play it safe here, we get forced to the outside, taking one of the billboards out, trying not to overtake any positions here. That'll give us a penalty as we're side by side with Kevin Magnussen. If not 3 wide there with Magnussen and Piastri in the Audi Sport, as we have both Latifi and Albon in front of us in the BMWs as we try to take our line outside of this next turn coming up the hill. And trying to make a move on Latifi here, pushing him to the outside here in one of these corners as we're coming to the downhill section. Now solidifying our position in front of Latifi, now behind the 2 Aston Martins of Vettel and Bottas, them being the only other 2 people on the track here besides me with the soft compound tire to hard. So that's going to be a little bit of a challenge to get past Vettel and Bottas, as they're the only other ones with the soft tires right now. And even though it is the first lap of the race here, trying to stay within a decent amount of time behind them, letting off the brakes a little bit more than I wanted to here, try to get as close as possible to them so I can catch their toe here. As Dan Ticktum still holding on strong in P7 there in the top 10 behind Charles Leclerc and in front of Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo of the McLarens. Just around 2 to 3 tenths of a second. Valtteri Bottas getting a good launch out of the last corner here, as we're just under half a second behind him to round out the end of lap 1. Moving on to lap 3, we finally have a position here where we try to make a move on the inside. Valtteri Bottas before the final corner. We hit the brakes late, and Sebastian Vettel had made a position against Yuki Tsunoda. But unfortunately, the next lap, we try to make the same move on Yuki Tsunoda here on the back straight. This time going to the outside lane and braking late here. Taking that position against Yuki Tsunoda, you see that he backs off on the inside of the turn. And next up is Sebastian Vettel. Continuing on the trend here, we're actually going to make the same move on Sebastian Vettel that we did Yuki Tsunoda at the last lap here. Same place outside, force him on the inside to have him break off. And securing P15 on lap 5 of the race. Now we have to go after Joe Granu. Moving on towards the end of lap 6, we had to put a little bit more patience in there when it comes to Joe Granu as we round out just inside the half-second mark, trying to make the same move that we did the last few people. on this back straight here as we get right up into the gearbox of Joe Granu. Try to move to the inside, fake him out, move to the outside. And holding this line as best as we can as we try to move in behind Lance Stroll of the Renault. And it was a bad angle here, but we ended up going 3 wide around the final corner between Unity Motorsports, Renault, and Audi Motorsports here as we're coming around and finishing at the end of lap 7. But our fight is not over yet. We're holding the outside line. Lance Stroll kind of closes us off. He goes out wide. We cut to the inside behind Joe Granu. Taking that position from Lance Stroll as we're still trying to fight for a position against Joe Granu into P13 as we are coming into Sector 2 here. And pretty good time frame here as Dan Ticktum still sitting in P7 about just over 4 seconds, 4.2 seconds behind Charles Leclerc of the top 6 here. And we actually make the move on the inside of Joe Granu here coming up before the hairpin of turn 10. So the back end actually coming out there a little bit as we come up to the straight, and Joe tries to make the move on the inside lane. We give him that space on the inside of this turn, and he still decides to back off. I don't know what's going on through his mind, but he probably didn't think it was a safer position for him to try to hold his position against me. And moving on to lap 10, we try to make a move on Mick Schumacher throughout these next few laps, but not quite enough as we had stretched out the lifespan of these soft tires. We were supposed to come in at lap 8, but we managed to stretch them to lap 10. As you can see by the board, Sebastian Vettel and Valtteri Bottas did come in already for their soft tires. So holding on to the hard tires for the end of the race at the start of lap 11 as we're coming out of the pits back in P20. So basically a lot of ground to cover, and not that very many people have pit yet. So I believe it's only us 3 here in the back of the grid that have pit off of our soft tires, and everybody else on the mediums. So a lot to look forward to when it comes to taking those positions back against the rest of the grid. Moving on to lap 13, or the end of lap 13, with Daniel Ticktum, our teammate, as Lewis Hamilton goes into the pits, and I believe Charles Leclerc goes in as well as the McLaren of Daniel Ricciardo coming in right behind him. And then I believe Pierre Gasly came in as well, as a lot of these guys are the front runners, swapping from their mediums to their hards. So you can see the Ferrari there of Charles Leclerc leaving. And pretty quick stop for Daniel Ticktum, as we're still sitting in P20. As Lance Stroll and Yuki Tsunoda there fighting for position here on the camera coming around turn 1. And Daniel Ticktum following through in turn 1. A little bit slow, but had to follow that white line from the pit stop. And sticking with Daniel here, rounding out the end of lap 14, Lando Norris is actually coming out of the pits, and he's still a little slow, and Daniel Ticktum ends up putting a little bit too much power on his engine here, spinning out, pulling out a yellow flag, and not really sure what happened because we were still rounding out the end of our lap. And I don't believe he touched any curb, but he did spin out and didn't want to move and cause any damage. Moving on to my perspective here as we're fighting for position against the AlfaTauri. And we hit the yellow flag, so I drop off and I see him spun out. I wasn't sure if he had a DNF, and I didn't want to risk checking because I was fighting for a position. And you could see him turning around there in the background, pulling out a yellow flag safety car. We're going to be jumping over to the end of the safety car. As you can see, this perspective of the front runner, Sergio Perez, from the safety car itself, coming around the back straight here. And we're going to be between Pierre Gasly and Mick Schumacher to start out the rest of this race once this yellow flag comes through. And a quick yellow flag restart as we try to see what we can do against Pierre Gasly, and basically having a repeat of the beginning of the race. And we get a warning here to give our position back to Pierre Gasly. A little bit of contact between himself and Esteban Ocon. There's we're 3 wide into turn 1. But sticking with the onboard as we're losing a little bit of ground on Pierre Gasly, and holding ourselves wide to try to keep our speed and regain that position back here. As that Renault of Esteban Ocon is being passed by Joe Granu of the Audi Sport. And basically trying to hold our ground here as we're just over halfway through this race. And still winning the fight for those points, because P10 is not enough for 1 point to start off the season. I know we can do better than this. As we can see a lot of the other front runners here of Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton. A quick glimpse through the last camera angle here. As Pierre Gasly kind of gets away from us on lap 18. Moving on to lap 20 now, as we are still behind Pierre Gasly, but DRS is now active. We could use it as we move Pierre Gasly to the inside, holding the outside line here on turn 1, and basically holding our ground here, try to keep that position from him as we push him back here. You can see even the mirrors dropping back a little bit. But we have a lot of work to do trying to catch up to Lando Norris, as we are about 1.6, 1.7 seconds behind Lando. And 8-9 laps to go for the rest of this race. And it didn't take long for us to catch up to Lando Norris, because he has a pack of other drivers to worry about and try to pass them. So we try to make a move here on the start of lap 22 as we round out the turn 1. I thought about making a move here, but I ended up hitting the brakes early, trying to hold that line and see if I can get Lando North to slip up here. Still with the DRS, coming out of the first few turns of the race, and pretty much a tough decision to make here at this point of the race, trying to find an opening to pass Lando Norris. But it was really tough. I had to watch my tire wear at this point too. We go a little bit wide here, try to move on the inside. We actually make the move after the hairpin, coming up to turn 10.
There appears to be an issue. We're currently investigating. Critical. Find somewhere to retire as soon as possible. We can't risk you carrying on with this race, I'm afraid. Again, find somewhere safe to stop. We need you to retire.
Red Bull pulling out all the stops today. What a great win. So, Anthony, what made the difference out there today?
I think it was clear what the main contributing factor out on track was: speed. I know it sounds like an awfully reductive statement, but fast cars win races, and we saw that today with our winner.
Red Bull put up an outstanding fight for the front position today, and it's great to see it paid off for them. They do so much for the sports that you can't help but be delighted by today's race win. Let's have a quick look at how the drivers' standings have changed. Sergio Perez takes the position of points leader in the Drivers' Championship. Well, after an incredible day of racing, who was your driver of the day, Ant?
I have to give it to Johnson. There was a lot going on all down the field, but they were the only one who I really felt maximised their potential.
Let's move on to the constructors. And Red Bull take over as championship leaders. And with that, we wrap up another weekend of motorsport action. But with more races lined up, be sure to join us when we come back with more Formula One.
All right, very upsetting for our first race back at Bahrain. A DNF engine failure so close to the end of the race. We had about 6 laps to go. We're on lap 25 out of 29, and 5 laps to go. And we're running there for upwards towards 11 points. Fighting for a position against Lewis Hamilton, trying to catch up to him, and we just couldn't catch up to him. And as soon as they're looking to see what's going on, we get an engine failure. So, and very unlucky for both of us, because that incident with Dan Ticktum earlier in the race that pulled out the yellow flag safety car, as he started in P9, and I pretty much ended up where I started. So a very unlucky start to this season, but we're hoping that we'll be back up and running and hopefully get some points on the board at the next race in Saudi Arabia. So yeah, Mercedes P2, Red Bull double podium, getting their points. And yeah, so Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari rounding out the top 3, McLaren, Renault, AlfaTauri for points for the first race for constructors. And Aston Martin, Honda, and myself also, we were the only 3 cars that went for the soft to hard compound. We did gain a lot of ground, but in the end it didn't really hurt. Didn't really help. And then that DNF from Alexander Albon, he had an engine failure as well right before I did. So yeah, still anybody's game, but Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, and Mercedes, top 4 teams up there. And the middle ground is split between Renault, AlfaTauri, Audi Sports, and Haas. And Aston Martin, Honda just slightly out of the midfield pack range for points. But yeah, it's a pretty good race. Felt pretty good with the upgrades compared to Bahrain on the first episode of the last season. But we'll see you guys in the next episode.